Hey, this is your friend Charlie, and today I want to discuss with you something that might surprise you. How about getting a little less serious might just be precisely what you need to tackle a problem that you're facing. Have you ever felt those moments where you're feeling heavy and every little disagreement or stress seems to be like a crisis? Well, today I want to explore how humor and paradox can be powerful tools for breaking through that anxiety and giving you the mindset that you need to tackle the problem you face. Let's do it together on the Charlie Grimes podcast.
The Charlie Grimes podcast aims to uplift listeners through engaging discussions, music, and Bible study reflections. Each episode features a variety of topics relative to real life, such as resilience, encouragement, and growth. The podcast focuses on positivity and community, empowering individuals to overcome challenges and embrace their unique journeys. Pastor Charlie has a ministry of support, motivation, and the power of connection. Let's do this thing together. Take it away, Charlie.
Right? I don't know about you, but the more serious that I seem to get about a certain problem or a challenge, sometimes the more emotionally focused and stressed, obviously, that I become. It's like we lose our ability to see exactly where we are, where we are and where the problem begins. We can't separate ourselves, right? We lose perspective. And everything becomes intense, everything's too heavy, and everything can seem like a catastrophe. Right, but here's where the magic of what I'm talking about comes in. Humor, paradox, something different, right? It naturally creates some space. Maybe it gets us to snap out of what we're thinking, help us to step back and to see things from a new perspective, perhaps. It gives us hope. It's a sense of relief, perhaps, from that intensity. It's a breath of fresh air. It can be fun in a relationship or in a work situation, whatever it is. Listen, in my studies as a pastor and as a learner, in my work with people, I see this over and over again. And I've been thinking about that and learning about the stress and the anxiety that we bring to our relationships. A lot in the training and learning that I've done, anxiety moves through a relationship. So if you're stressed, you're going to react a certain way. And if you get too serious, right, too heavy, you can really lose perspective on what's actually going on. And for me, I've felt like it's created this pressure cooker sometimes. Like the stakes are really high, and it just needs some relief. It needs to be put back into perspective. And here's the beautiful thing about humor, about paradox. Perhaps sometimes the best way to release that pressure isn't to buckle down and try to intensely fix it. It's actually to lighten up a bit, to step back and to just check your heart, check your mind and your perspective. Here's a great story. One of the classic stories from my past. Many of you may remember, if I haven't told you, but I was a high school football player. And growing up, it was a wonderful part of my life, wonderful challenge, athletics and teamwork and perseverance and training and all of those good things that come from, participating in sports. But my senior year, after a particularly heartbreaking loss on our homecoming night, you can imagine how powerful of an evening that is for a young man, where I was the starting quarterback for the team. After that game, my coach came up to me as I was crying in the locker room, seated by my stuff. And in a moment of just intimacy, he basically sat down beside me and he said, "Grimes, I want you to listen to me really carefully here. This is not nearly as bad as you think it is. And he got my attention, obviously. And he said this classic cliche that we sometimes say. You realize that there's 1 billion people in China who don't even know that this game even happened, nor do they even care that this game happened tonight. Wow. Okay. Yep. I get it, Coach. And it was kind of funny. You're like, oh, why am I crying over this? But I, in fact, have had to tell myself that many times throughout my life. Basically, you know what? This is not nearly as bad as I think it is. And it was, it was a perspective check that night. And it may have been paradoxical coming from the coach, right? My mentor, my friend, my teacher. It was kind of paradoxical that he said, don't worry about it. Like you're doing fine. And so that's the next thing I want to talk about is paradox. I want you to think about this. There's a classic story I remember. They sometimes coach runners that when a dog comes running out after you, when you're running by someone's house, this kind of takes a little bit of courage. But if you run towards that dog may back down and be like, oh, whoa, and he'll turn and go back to his house. Now, I've never really tested this. Maybe some of you that are runners can tell me this, but they say that if you run towards that dog with this intent, like, oh, I'm going to get you, like you thought you were getting me, but I'm actually getting you, the dog will turn and run the other direction. And so that's paradox. We're doing something unexpected. Paradox is about doing the opposite of what someone would expect, and it can be surprisingly powerful. Suppose you're constantly arguing with your wife about being late, and instead of trying harder to be on time, you might just schedule a late day. How about me? That's what I did through the years. And say, listen, I'm not going to be home before 6 o'clock. And it seems kind of counterintuitive, but at least it was a happy medium. Here's why it works. It breaks this anxiety cycle that she thought I was going to be home by 5:30. And I just did the opposite and said, listen, I'm sorry. I'm not going to be home before 6 o'clock. Now, I needed a perspective check. We all did, to say, this is what life is. And I'll try to get home before 6 o'clock. But yeah, I want you to think about maybe a relationship where you're getting into a power struggle like that. Maybe you're arguing with your spouse about leaving stuff all over the room. Like, you're messy. And so he or she is on you. Hey, you need to quit being so messy. You need to pick up your stuff. Why don't you maybe suggest that there's a day when we can be messy? So Wednesday is messy day, and we just throw stuff everywhere. And you get them involved, and see how fun it is? You just leave your socks all over the room. And then, of course, Thursday we have to clean it all up. But what it does is it kind of gives you some space. Here's why it works. It breaks down the anxiety cycle. It changes things. It brings awareness to the pattern, but it does it in a playful kind of way, right? And it's a powerful tool that I would love for you to put into practice in your life, especially in relationships that you might have strain or stress or conflict. I mean, let's be honest. That might make your spouse laugh for them to say, okay, Wednesday's messy day. We can all be messy on Wednesday. But laughter can be like this pressure release valve. Something that shifts. When you can laugh together, you can say, all right, okay, we'll try it. You can break the patterns. You can embrace each other's quirks. It's okay. It's all right that our room is a little bit more messy. But what it says is by connecting with this person, you're saying, hey, we're in this together. It's kind of funny how we do this. Like, I'm messy, and so Wednesday I get to be messy. Another thing that I've noticed, and I've been around, obviously, people who have been married a very long time, they've been in close relationships, they kind of make maybe some inside jokes. They may rib each other. They may razz each other a little bit, right? And that's okay. There's a playful pattern to that. And this kind of humor, I think I've found to be very powerful. The couples may make fun of each other, but it's all in good love. And they're typically doing that to celebrate each other. They may do an impression of each other. They know each other well enough that they can do that. And so, you know what? I want to give you some practical, really, hopefully helpful tips, some very specific tips on how we can start to implement paradox, playfulness, a little bit of humor into our world so that we're not so serious all the time. We'll be right back.
Hey, podcast listeners, we'd like to take a quick break to share something special with you. Did you know the Charlie Grimes podcast is a joint ministry effort, a partnership between Pastor Charlie and the wonderful congregation at Walnut Creek Mennonite Church? That's right. This podcast is a way for us to extend our community and ministry beyond the church's walls. If you're ever in the area, we would love for you to visit us. We're located in beautiful Holmes County, Ohio, known for its serene landscapes and warm, welcoming community. We invite you to join us for our Sunday services each week at 10 a.m. Whether you're a longtime believer or just beginning to explore your faith, you'll find a loving and supportive environment. Our services offer a unique blend of traditional and contemporary elements, creating a space where everyone can connect with God meaningfully. Pastor Charlie's teachings and messages, which you enjoy on this podcast, are rooted in the same faith and values we uphold at Walnut Creek Mennonite Church. The church is a place to explore Scripture, engage in meaningful conversations, and strengthen your relationship with God. As Charlie encourages you on the podcast, our church community supports one another in our upward, inward, and outward journeys. So if you're looking for a church home or just passing through, we'd be thrilled to have you. Visit Walnut Creek Mennonite Church in beautiful Holmes County, Ohio. We are located between Sugar Creek and Berlin, and you can learn more about us at our website and in the show notes below. We believe faith is a journey best traveled together, and we'd love to walk with you on it. Now back to the podcast.
All right, so how do we start to practically put this into motion in our lives? Well, the first and foremost thing, as we've said in some of our past episodes, you gotta start noticing when this phenomena is happening. When you feel like you're getting too serious, like your shoulders can get tight, your heart can start to pound a little bit. You're feeling, perhaps your hands get a little sweaty. Like you're starting to stress. Okay, that's your cue. You need to think about that moment and try giving yourself a little bit of grace to say, okay, am I overthinking this, right? How can I implement something different to kind of break this cycle? One of the things that we sometimes do in counseling, which, again, can be very helpful for you and perhaps a spouse or a family member who are really, really close together and you're having a hard time talking about a particular topic. One thing that you could do is, it's going to sound absurd, but I want you to follow me now. While we have this conversation, I want to use a timer and I want to do some timing and say, okay, one person is going to express their opinion and their side for 1 to 2 minutes. The other person is just going to listen. We're not going to argue. We're just going to listen with the intent to try to understand. And then after 2 minutes, we'll switch it, right? 2 minutes. It's almost like a debate. Remember the television debates? President, Mr. President, okay, 2 minutes. Mr. Vice President, 2 minutes, whatever. I know it sounds weird, but it can be really helpful for a difficult conversation to say, okay, we both agree we need to do something different because we're not making any progress here. And paradoxically, this can reduce the anxiety that I have to argue or speak over my partner or my spouse, and I can actually express myself, and then I need to listen and let that person do the same. And that's where we go back to self-differentiation, right? So you got 2 minutes, express yourself any way you choose. I'm not going to cut you off. And then I would want you to do the same for me, right? Here's another thought that I might challenge those of you who would be considered perfectionists. Okay, those of you who really want things to be a certain way. Well, that's a problem sometimes. Do you know that can be annoying to other people? Like, what if you were to purposely do something a little bit imperfect within your own self just to do it that way, to force yourself to understand that everything doesn't have to be perfect? Now, you do this to yourself. You say, oh, I have to do it this way, or I have to have this just this way. No, purposely do it less than that with yourself on purpose to expose yourself. And I want you to try to break the cycle of needing to have everything perfect in order to reduce your stress. You see what I'm getting at? You're exposing yourself paradoxically by doing something different to expose yourself to imperfection. And that over time is going to actually reduce your stress and reduce your reaction when you see somebody do something like one of your children who, may not do it the way you want it done. Now, let me give you some examples on humor. When I was leading, especially in the classroom or on a team, when I was the leader, when I was the coach, I would try to create nicknames for the people that I was working with. And these are nicknames that are going to be, complimentary. So, let's go, champ, or let's go, I had a wonderful young man who had red hair, so I would call him Big Red. Let's go, Big Red. You can do this. Now, I had another young man who was a thrower. He's a strong, dominating personality. We called him Big Ray. Let's go, Big Ray. You can do this, Big Ray. And you know what? Those insider languages, the insider language of a nickname can be very powerful for building a relationship that could bear the truth. And whenever I had to confront these guys or gals, I would use their nickname. I would say, hey, Big Ray, come on. Let's think about this now. I think to develop silly rituals within your family might be really fun. It's a humorous way, and I have a classic example of this, a little window into my wife Wendy's life and my routine. So she actually set up our Alexa. So this is this home listening device, personal assistant type of thing, that at every night at 10 p.m., it starts playing this funky song, right? And it's kind of upbeat, it's the end of the day. It's closing time is kind of one of the lines in it. And it plays for like 60 seconds. And then it just turns all the lights off in the living room and the kitchen area. And so she set this routine up. And almost every single night, we both are kind of anticipating. We might be in the middle of a conversation, hopefully not arguing, right? But we hear that music and it's our ritual. So we start dancing. And we do funny dances and we laugh and, it just takes the edge off of whatever's going on as we end our day together on a fun, funky note before the lights turn off and we're headed to bed. So set up a silly ritual. That can be really helpful for building camaraderie and building a trust and lowering the tension within a relationship. Another great example, I actually have learned this from my brother Jim. A shout out to James Grimes. My brother is pretty good at impressions, and he has this knack for bringing up a humorous line from a movie. We'd be playing a game, the tension would kind of rise, and all of a sudden he'd come through with some funny saying that would crack us all up. The input of humor through like a character from a movie or a line of movie, he does this really silly kind of impression of, Yoda, that sound, that, the movie, the character, and it just breaks the tension, right? And so that might be a way that you can lighten the mood and provide, this input of just relax. It's okay. We're okay. Everybody is going to be fine. Another fun thing might be to use exaggeration. This can get a little bit sarcastic, but you might, stand your ground with somebody by exaggerating what they're saying to an absurd degree. Now, you got to be careful with this, of course, but this can help perhaps you make a point by making a point that you're like, are you silly? This is crazy. What are we thinking about? Now, you need to be careful with all of this. Like, there are some cautions here, right? Humor should never be used as a weapon. We can't be sarcastic or dismissive with somebody. That's not what I'm talking about here. Timing is everything. If your partner, your loved one shares something that's traumatic or harrowing or, like I say, that's not the moment for jokes, right? We're not going to use this in the middle of the hospital unless it's really appropriate. And it's the goal is connection, not deflection. You're not trying to just get out of the conversation. All right. So as we end this episode, I want to just challenge you that sometimes you take yourself too seriously. I know I do. I have learned over and over again that I take myself too seriously. And I've had to learn how to implement paradox, playfulness, humor into my life, both individually and in my relationships, to take the anxiety down a couple notches. Okay, here's your homework. If you're struggling with a particular relationship, a person at work, a person at school, a person in your family, a person at church, I want you to think of a way that you can build camaraderie with this person, perhaps by telling them a joke or a funny story. Perhaps you can create a silly kind of ritual or a nickname for what you're struggling with. And I want you to notice what happens when you bring some lighthearted, playful fun back into your relationships, back into your life, okay? Tell yourself a dad joke, make it cheesy, it's okay, but I want you to watch and see if that doesn't create more space. It creates a little bit of space without losing connection, right? And it's going to create this atmosphere for you to have flexibility and joy and hopefully a deeper sense of peace in your life and in your relationships. Hey, thanks again so much for listening. Thanks for following along with our journey. I hope this has been inspirational and helpful for you. Drop a comment or a rate and a rating on the podcast listening platform that you're on. But thanks so much for listening and following along. Let's take what we have, do what we can, and love people right where they're at with a little bit of playful humor every once in a while. All the best.
Thanks for joining the Charlie Grimes podcast. We hope you feel inspired and uplifted. Remember to start where you are, take what you have, and do what you can. Keep embracing your journey, and we'll see you next time. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, comment, subscribe, and share the podcast with your friends and family. Your support helps us spread encouragement and positivity to others.